Well, greetings one and all. This is your rogue leader, Leslie Eiler Thompson. I'm so glad you're here for the very first episode of the brand new podcast, The Rogue Ones. You might be thinking, well, hey, there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts already. Why start a new one? This is a great point and a great question. The reason I am starting this podcast is because I believe that there are more stories that need to be told than there are outlets for them. I've come across so many people, and I'm sure you have too, and I hear their stories and I think, goodness, the world would be a better place if they got to hear this, and we can all glean some very important wisdom from it. So, thus, a podcast. I am so interested in how people's experiences and random opportunities paired with their work and their skill come together into a glorious, wonderful rogue journey. This is about people who are going on journeys that are extremely exciting and exhilarating, but also incredibly terrifying, but so worth it. I am excited to jump in and meet these people and learn from their experiences and gain some wisdom, and I hope you are too. Without further ado, let's jump into my first conversation with our first Rogue One. Her name is Jordyn Shellhart. She is a singer-songwriter right here in Nashville, Tennessee. She has an incredible story. We started talking about a year ago. It's when our friendship began. Through the course of a couple of interactions, we ended up having some really great conversations surrounding the idea of dreams and what happens when your dream doesn't happen the way that you want it to. Certainly we all can relate to that. So let's jump right into my conversation with Jordyn Shellhart. We begin with talking about a time that Jordyn and I took a random road trip to Anderson, Indiana, and on the way there we actually made Spotify playlists for each other to help each other get to know our musical journey and how that impacted our life. And we had dinner right before a show we were going to. It was this adorable little diner. So we're going to plop in right when we're talking about what we ate at the diner.
Over tuna melts or something? You know what I'm talking about? What were those things? It was beef, but the particular brand of bread is different, and it's
Like a French, like a hoagie.
Nope. Dang it.
Man, ciabatta?
No.
Focaccia?
Let's come back to this.
Naan? Okay. You want to tell them a little bit about your background. So you moved from California.
I did. I was born in Wyoming and lived in California until I was 10, Northern California, Santa Rosa. Moved to Nashville with my mom and my brother, and we moved here for my music. I started just, playing and whatever, trying to learn how to do it, and I signed a publishing deal with Seagale Music in 2009, I think. I was 14.
So next year is 10 years.
Yeah, I'm in my 9th year right now, which is crazy. I can't believe that. But yeah, so I signed the publishing deal, and then I briefly had a record deal with Sony when I was 15, and that was a whole thing. And I've been writing at Seagale ever since.
So we're at this diner. We started talking about just musically things that we had done. But what was the thing for you that kind of changed your music trajectory in your teens and your whole kind of outlook on everything?
I was pretty much in the thick of the having a record deal situation, and then I lost my voice. Talking was difficult. Singing was more difficult. It's a condition called spasmodic dysphonia, which causes a tremor. So even when I was speaking, there would be times when it was sort of like choke, like that,
wow,
like a tremor.
The record deal stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find a greater focus on your songwriting after that?
Yeah, I basically lost touch with all my co-writers. Not all of them, but most of them. And my voice started to come back when I was about 18 or 19. I started getting my voice back and started trying to write more, and I didn't really have anybody to co-write with that I had kept in touch with, so it sort of made me learn how to write by myself, which was a really huge turning point for me as a writer, and I figured out really what I was artistically. I had no idea before that. I mean, I had an idea, but when you're forced to all right, this is all down to you. What do you bring to the table when there's nobody there to help shape that?
Right.
I really discovered my voice, I think, in more than one way.
Now that you know a little bit more about Jordyn and her story, let's go back to the diner conversation, and specifically how that concert that we went to kind of changed our thoughts about our dreams, especially in reference to a song by the title of Indiana by an artist named John McLaughlin, who was the concert that we attended that weekend.
So the song that I referenced earlier that both of us kind of lost our hats over, there's a song on this record. The record's called Indiana. Title track is Indiana. And we had been talking for weeks beforehand about this song. You know, it's got this line, I'm glad she never fell in love with me. This is a repeating hook. And you get this feeling that he lost a relationship, and it could have been a really good relationship. But he's trying to talk himself out of the fact that it was going to happen. But there are a couple lines that are just a little mysterious. Like, what happened with this relationship? And I know I went into it going, I can't wait till he explains this song, because we'll finally know what happened with this relationship. So he's explaining it. We're sitting there, he's explaining Indiana, and he sat down to write the song. And the girl was music. And both of us sighed. Like, I remember each of us going, oh, like almost air out of our lungs, because it was this realization that music can be a relationship and we can hurt each other. And so I think that was a huge conversation for both of us, and that was what your blog was about.
Yeah, I thought it was really powerful that he had decided in that moment to quit. And he was like, all right, how am I going to justify this to everybody back home? I'm quitting. How do I just get over it? And that's such an easy way to do that, is to say, you know what, I'm glad that never happened. And I was really familiar with that. So seeing it, the blog that I wrote, it sort of shook that for me, being like, okay, why am I so scared to say that I wanted it and it didn't happen? And why am I so scared now to say that I still want it, with the risk that it won't happen? And it's just this thing that we build on our pride, where we're like, that wouldn't have been good anyway, so thank God that didn't work. And then now to be like in a situation where you're still trying to make something happen, but if you're already preparing to say that, if you're already preparing for the I'm glad she never fell in love with me, then you're not really giving it your all.
You know, you as a songwriter are constantly opening yourself up to vulnerability. And I think that's something as creators and as artists for us to think about, is, are we already copping out, and are we already making excuses for what we haven't done yet, you know?
Yeah, because it's scary and it's painful when it doesn't work. And we're bracing ourselves. Because it's a long shot. It's a pipe dream. Let's be real.
I just read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, which I'm saying to every person I have run across in the last 2 weeks, because it's huge. And I'm also 10 years behind, because that book came out in 2008. It does two things. It motivates you to become a greater version of who you are, but then it also gives you grace to say there are some things that you absolutely cannot control.
Someone once said, you have a right to your labor, but you do not have a right to the fruits of your labor.
We do a great disservice to ourselves as artists and to the next generation of artists when we continually perpetuate the idea that our art is ours and that we own it. And so however good it is, I mean, you look at some of the top pop acts. I'm thinking Bruno Mars right now, because you watch him on stage and he's probably one of the best pop performers, right now.
Totally, across the board.
Right. But who are the hundreds of people from wardrobe to producers who advised on arrangement of tune, all that stuff? Who are all the people that played into that? Our art is not purely ours at the end of it, you know?
Yeah.
So nitty-gritty of just a difficult conversation, because a lot of times we like to talk about art and we like to talk about doing the best art. We also need to live and eat and pay bills and stuff. And how does that play itself out in your life?
In paying the bills.
Yeah, paying bills and...
Well, I'm so incredibly thankful to my publishers who have stuck by me since I was 14. I'm not making a ton of money, but I'm willing to sacrifice a lot of creature comforts for what I'm doing, because, it's easier for me. I'm not married and I don't have children, and I'm 23 and I can just kind of do my thing, but to me, I don't really have the ability or the desire to do anything else. I didn't go to college. because I had a publishing deal already, and
Yeah.
I spent my whole life knowing I was doing this, so I didn't really develop any other skill set at all. And I get nervous in settings where I'm not comfortable or where I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't even like to, I don't even like to go there, so getting a real job would just be like my nightmare. So, yeah, I'm either going to succeed at music or I'm going to succeed at music. Those are sort of the options I have because I just really have written my life in a way that I don't have anywhere else to really lean.
Something you said that was so true, and people don't talk about it enough, is it's like comes down to choice. Like you said, you sacrifice a lot of creature comforts. And I think that that's huge. Like we don't talk enough about priorities, and I'm learning now that you do have to make your priorities and you make your choices. I mean, I am not a school person. I went to school, but it was very painful and very difficult. And, like, studying was not fun.
Yeah.
So, like, I didn't choose, like, we didn't choose to be doctors or anything. Like, or engineers or smart people things. Like, we did what we loved to do. Someone told me once that, they said it in the wrong way. They said it in the totally wrong way. And I think I might have told you this before, but they said, it's a really good thing you can do something other than music. And this was somebody that was actually very musically, just very well established, and said that to me. And I had a massive meltdown. I secluded myself, cried quite a bit.
Did it feel like he was saying because you weren't good enough
Yes.
to do it? Right.
Yes. I felt like what was said to me was, you are not good at music, so it's a really great thing you have something else, because you would never make it. That was what I heard. Yeah. You will never make it. But I felt like my whole life I had been waiting for somebody who knew something to say to me, yes, keep going. Or, you know what? Just make it a hobby.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works. Much to my surprise, after I cried my eyes out for 15 minutes, I came back and looked in the mirror, and that little flicker of whatever it was still there. Now, I know what he was saying to me was not that. What he was saying to me was, there are people in this world who can't do anything other than music. Himself being one of them. And I think young musicians, like when they're in their teens, nurture that gift, nurture that skill. But if you are really also good at basket weaving, perhaps maybe even nurture the basket weaving, because the gig will end eventually.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be all or nothing for everybody.
Right.
It works out that way sometimes for some people.
Yeah, which is wonderful.
I think it's just a matter of knowing that you are where you're meant to be, and knowing that we were all genuinely created differently and for different purposes. And I think that when I see some people that I grew up with even who are as talented and as capable as I have ever been with music, and they chose to go to college and become a teacher or whatever it is, and there's no part of me that thinks, well, it's because I was just more talented, more gifted, I'm just better. It was just that I somehow ended up doing it every day and sticking with it. And there's something to be said for practice and time spent. You definitely evolve at a different rate than someone who's not doing it all the time. But it's not because we started out with a baseline talent difference, I don't think. Obviously, some people are not musically inclined. Those people I'm not talking about.
Right.
Those of us who were musical kids, who were writing songs as children and making stuff up and singing and doing the thing and playing instruments. Did you choose to do it, or did you choose to do something else?
Well, and that's when our conversation in the diner that fated day.
Right.
One of the things that I brought up was that I went to New York for this callback for this national tour, and I realized while I was there, even if they would have offered me the gig, I think I would have said no, because it just, with the choices I've made so far in life, I have a marriage that I love and I want to keep healthy, and if I had done that, it would have really, really, really been bad. And it probably would have affected my ability to perform in that role, but I realized it is a choice. And these girls that I was in the dressing room area with, I had a mass amount of respect for them, and there was a moment where it all just kind of washed over me, because these girls are broke. They are babysitting, waitressing, all sorts of stuff. But they have made the choice to go to this place where they are going to be broke, But for them, it is they must do it. And that was when I realized whatever this is, this musical theater thing, I don't need to do it like they do. Because I'm not willing to sacrifice all things to come up here and live this lifestyle, because you kind of have to. I could make that decision and perhaps go on to do, quote, great things, but...
What is great?
Exactly.
Something can be great without the whole world watching it happen. I definitely think in Western society we elevate something that is being exposed to the masses over something that happens in the home. But ultimately, that's why I think that our foundation has to be set on something sturdier than that.
You bring up a good sort of overall disclaimer, is that we come from this from a Christian perspective. It colors the way we see priorities, and I don't want to assume that everybody else sees that way. You know, in fact, we don't. We aren't supposed to assume that everyone thinks the way that we do.
Definitely not. I think it's comforting and challenging at the same time, and extremely validating to believe that you're fulfilling a purpose, and that it might look different than what the world says is great, and it can still be great.
So yeah, I think this is a cool conversation, because this podcast is essentially, I just like to sit down with rogues who I just think are doing some really cool thinking and are doing great work. And I'm honored that you were my first guest. This is so fun.
Me too.
You know, this idea of being a rogue, I think I'm making it into a thing, which do we need to make it into a thing? Probably not, but whatever.
Here we are.
We're rogues in a way. We're kind of going, I see everybody else doing this, but I'd actually like to do something else, thank you. And off we go. Despite not having, what was it you said? The Jason Isbell line.
Creature comforts.
Creature comforts. That's brilliant. Despite like not feeling totally fulfilled in our art or whatever, we still persist, and off we go.
I'm going to stop the conversation there. Of course, as you might imagine, Jordyn and I spoke for hours after this. We spoke about Enneagrams, we spoke about personality tests. It was a lot of fun. But for this purpose, I think I'm going to wrap us up. I want to thank Jordyn for the time that she spent talking with me and exploring this idea of dreams. And as artists, how do we pursue our dreams? I found the conversation to be incredibly inspiring, and I hope you were also moved by it. Before we depart, I want to take a moment to point out the description of this podcast. There's a link to the song Jordyn and I talked about earlier. The song is Indiana by John McLaughlin, so be sure to check that out. You will also find a link to We Are the Rogue Ones, which is the movement surrounding this podcast. It's the idea that all of us are rogues in some way, shape, or form. There is exclusive merchandise made by people who are rogues themselves. So whether it's me or my good friend Amanda of Nashik, there's a really cool makeup bag up there right now. There are only a few left. We only make a handful of these items, and so you gotta hurry to go get them. I will give you 30% off any order of yours with code PODCAST, all capital letters. So go there, wearetherogueones.com, sign up for the email list. You will receive inside information about each podcast that comes out, with a little bit more of the story and some challenging ways that we can all work together to be better rogues. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that whether you are on a walk or on a run or in your car road tripping, or maybe you're at work, that you will be inspired to think bigger and dream greater, and then actually go after those things, because you find that once you start doing that, it gets pretty cool. So thank you, Rogue One. Appreciate you joining me, and we'll see you next time on the Rogue Ones podcast.